Hi everybody, this is Patrick from Sasquatch in the Wild, and this is a continuation. This would be part 3, I do believe. And while I was down and I was looking at all those different structures, Jim eventually came down and he hooked up with me, and we kind of wandered around together in this little area behind our campsite. At first glance, when you look at these pictures, you just say, well, okay, that's a long tree, these are broken parts of branches, and there's an odd branch that's or part of a tree that's shoved in between that tree over here on the right side. So this is a long tree here, and there's a part of a tree here, and there's a part of a tree here. The funny thing, at first glance, most people will walk right past this and they don't think about this at all. And this is a calling card, and it should be spoken with like almost loud words, because this tree here had fallen, and I do recall there's a stump or something back here, so this tree was either pushed over or it fell. This end here is actually this branch, this part of the trunk would have fit right here on that tree. This is part of that, and this is part of this. So it's funny how this thing was broken into 3 sections, but if this would have fallen the right way, this tree should have extended all the way down through, and I think it did, because if we look at it carefully, it kind of looks like it was indented and it went down all the way through. But for whatever reason, this wasn't cut and that's not cut. But for whatever reason, this part of the tree is now sitting on the reverse side of this tree. And there's no reason for that to snap and to fall that direction. But let's say it did. Let's say this tree fell, it broke, and it fell on the other side of this tree. All right, so how did this happen? How did this part of the tree land in between these trees without busting all these branches? All these branches should have been snapped off and broken off. Even this one that's still connected to this is still there. It's still attached to this main trunk. So these are an oddity. This is an oddity event that doesn't add up. This should not be broken and placed right here. And this one shouldn't be up higher than the rest of these two and stuffed into this wedge of a tree. If you're researching Bigfoot or Sasquatch, Yowie Yeti, whichever you're going to call it, big man, hairy man, whatever floats your boat, this is a calling card. This says something is here, and you should always pay attention to the weird surroundings. Yeah, so the trunk is, I do believe, right here. So this broke off of this. It's on the ground right next to the trunk. That's the other part of the tree, and that's still the top part of the tree. See, there you go. It was snapped. Still doesn't make any sense. No matter how hard you look at it, it doesn't make any sense. This is a standard tree break. We find these a lot in Colorado. We find small aspens that are broken like this, and all the way up to pole pines that are broken like this. As like from the very first video, or the very first picture I showed you, I was standing up here when I took the picture. Then I came around and I decided to take a photograph looking back at it. It kind of looks like a house or a church, part of a church. If this was the bottom part of the foundation of the home, and this would say be an arched to a window or something. It kind of gives that feel, but I know that this isn't floating above this. This is just sitting off a little ways back. Equal signs. The equal signs that I found typically symbolize that there is a path somewhere. There's a path up here somewhere, and there's a path down this way somewhere, if you follow this. Another tree break. This is more standard about what we'll find for a size for a tree break. Sometimes like that other one prior, and on the Site A website, on the Site A video that I did, you can see a series of these breaks in a row that are kind of intriguing. All at different heights, all the way down. I think the highest one is about maybe a 5 to 6, 7 foot tall break, and then it goes a little lower, and then it goes down to the lowest. And then there's another one on the other side. This is a strange pattern for a structure because we're looking at something. Now, these pictures are kind of out of order, and I'm not sure why it did it, but it did it the way it did when it uploaded all the images to the computer. But there is a series of events going on here, and I'll show it to you. So that last picture, this part of the tree is this part of the tree. And I'm looking on at it from this side, from the direction that Jim is looking right now, is the direction that I was over here looking back. So at first he just said, well, this tree just fell. And what I pointed out to him was, well, the tree couldn't have just fallen because it's broken here and it's broken here, and it's avoiding hitting this tree. And he had to take a second glance at that and said, you're right, there is something odd here. So this long branch comes down, stops. There's a broken separate piece here that is still technically connected. It looks like it's still connected, but it's broken. And these pieces were brought back in and placed just right to make it look like one complete tree. But the reality is that long branch, or the top part of that tree, stops right here. And there's another log right here, and there's another, and this is the main part of the log. And then when we look for the end part, the trunk, I don't believe the trunk was here. I think the trunk was gone. So this tree was brought in and broken twice. So it's broken here, and then it's broken here, which I thought was hilarious. I want to say this is that tree that's coming down. It is. I'm just standing back at a different angle. So you can see the break there, and then it comes down to like a wedge, and it's broken back up and down. There's like a log or something here that it was broken over, but it was avoiding this tree and this tree. So it had to go around the trees and kind of pull back over. And again, he thought that was kind of strange after he noticed what I was pointing out. This is another thing, when you're looking at weird structures, you got a main stick. Now, yeah, granted, this could have been just a tree that fell over and another tree landed on top and a stick on top of that. But then you start looking at why are all these sticks overlapping each other? And it doesn't really add up on why. Because we couldn't find where this part of the tree came from. We didn't find where this came from. We couldn't figure out where this came from. And yet they were all placed for a specific reason. And this is a tree break up on this end, which covers over this tree that comes down here, that is covered over by other things. So we have a stick that was brought in and laid up against this tree. This stick is weird because it's crossing this one, and it is pushed up against this. So the branches are spread apart and they're supposed to be around this tree. And it's just really weird. I mean, just stupid little oddities here and there. And this would be more done by a juvenile Sasquatch versus an adult. We think the juveniles mimic what the adults are doing. This is a crazy structure. So, or actually a crazy break. This reminds me of, let's see if I can put the camera up right just a little bit. So if you see that loop up there, that was actually a break. And whatever it was made that crazy symbol. Now that symbol looks a lot like the breast cancer awareness symbol. And that blew my mind because I've seen this now in 2 spots in Colorado. I saw it here at this location, and I saw another one. I think it was down where Junior is. I think that's where I saw it. There's a closer closer shot or photograph of this coming up. You can see the loop here. This is what blows my mind. They didn't break it all the way because there's a thin piece of bark that's still holding this together. You can see that it's just broken just enough that that part of the bark is still holding both sides together to make that crazy loop that looks like something from the cancer awareness stuff. This was a crazy structure that we had found, that it has so many things going on. You have one beam going across here. You have another, everything's supported off of one to another. It was just insane. And we just sat there. Now, I don't know why it looks like there's smoke here. Because it wasn't smoking anything near there. It's just kind of funny that this is here in this photograph. Again, it's just overall strange on how this thing was put together. This is a small structure, probably a juvenile structure. The branches are brought in and laid in, and they're overlapping each other, almost like a star pattern. And this is the beginning of a really intriguing star pattern that I have on my computer system. And eventually you'll see these things when I show photographs of when I was out near Leadville. Some of the patterns that wrap around these trees are just insanely cool. It kind of looks like something from a pattern that I've seen, like a sun pattern from First Nations when they drew these things up. They just look really cool. Close-up shot of that. Or back to that other piece from standing up from another side. This tree that's here is supporting this log, which is keeping this log from laying down too much weight on this log. And it just is so weird. Some of their designs are really cool, and some of them you just gotta wonder, what are you thinking when you put this together? But I think some of them have a direct meaning, like the equal sign. If you follow one side to the other, you'll find a path. You'll find a way to get back home, or a new hiking trail, or maybe a new Sasquatch trail. It's kind of hard to read this one because of the sunlight. This is that part of that tree that you didn't necessarily see, but this is where part of a tree came down through, and it broke, and it broke, and it broke this way, and you get to see a different aspect. And we thought the branch came straight through, and This is where it was broken into 3 sections. This is one part of it, this is the second part of it, and this is the part that led back up to the end of the tree. That's why I said that some of these pictures are out of sorts, and this is that one. I don't remember what I was looking at here, unless I think there was a bunch of things going on down in here. We didn't really necessarily go down to see. Sometimes when you're hiking, it wears on your legs a bit, especially when you're going up and down hills. But there is something going on with this right here, and I think I took more photographs of that. Another tree break. Trying to see what we were looking at here. I know there's a star pattern here. It's covered over by all the grasses and stuff. But there's a log that comes right by this one. There's another log that comes over this, another log that comes across this. And this is a star pattern. Sometimes the trunks are in the middle of the star pattern, sometimes they're not. When you're looking at arches, especially like this one, this arch I think is stopping right here. Yeah, it's stopping right here because of there's a Y cut or a Y piece at the very end, which is stopping it from going in. But if you're looking at structures, especially with arches, look for an arch that has a 4 to 6 inch push in, like it's pushed into the ground. If you pull up on that side and there's about 4 to 6 inches of that tip of that tree shoved in the ground, that's a Sasquatch sign. That's a good sign to find. If it's just an arch, that doesn't mean that a Sasquatch did it. You can say that it is all day long, but there's no real proof to that, because it could be snow load, it could be man-made, it could be just about anything. It could be the tree was dying and it bent and it slowly bent over. Hard winds can do this sometimes to trees, just bend them over and they just can't rewrite themselves. But there was a program on TV for a while that showed a guy, it was I want to say like these guys restored cabins and stuff up in Canada or something like that, or up in Michigan. And this one guy climbed out onto an aspen and he slowly worked the aspen in. He was off the ground while he was doing this. And the aspen slowly made that curve, just like this. Slowly made a curve. And then when he let go, the tree stayed. Now that tree is doomed to die. The one that he did. This tree, of course, did die. Most of the trees that are going crisscrossing through this were either dead or were intentionally placed here. But it is interesting to see that it looks like there's arches. Now I know that one branch here might be connected. These two might be connected, but they were fed through this thing. They didn't fall into it because this branch, even though it looks like it goes all the way through, the top one seems to be going in front and behind other branches, and that's hard to do when a tree is falling down on top of something or falling down on top of another tree. Not really sure what I would be looking at here. This is a V that you want to find. The direction that it's pointing this way, there's going to be a path down that direction. And because it's sitting on top of a log, you are going to go through something like a ravine, or you're going to step through something. It could even be a river that you're going to be going through. Sometimes the V's are not broken like this. Sometimes the V's are two separate pieces of wood and they're touching. I found this series of trees interesting because it goes up, it bends over, and it comes back down. Now I'm not sure how this actually works because I kept looking at this going, what am I looking at? And it looks like they're connected. Like these two trees grew together. And that does not happen very often unless one of these two is the top. But they both have a root. Both of these have, like this is your trunk, and this is, or your stump, your tree stumps. So that's why it throws me off when I'm looking at this, because it just doesn't add up on how this thing works. Or if they even grew together on purpose, or if it was a mistake, a genetic mistake. But I found it interesting, and that the tree is still alive. This part of the tree looks like it's alive. This part of the tree looks like it has seen better days. But that's that hard twist. It's just odd to see something like that. I took a lot of photographs of this. View from a distance. This was interesting. So this is a standard pine tree. The branch that's coming off here, we have branches that are going crisscross on top of these branches. Like something picked up big chunks of wood and just laid it across the top of this. Kind of like when we would build a fort up in a tree. This is kind of the same thing. And this to me looks like a nest of some sort or a place of storage. It was just bizarre to find this. We could not figure out why that the stuff was up here unless there was a specific purpose for some of this wood. So if they're tearing down structures, which they do from time to time, they'll tear down something to symbolize something, and if it's not being met, then they'll tear down that structure and they'll do something else with that wood. And this might be very well be what they're doing, is that they store the wood up high, and it may keep predators like a mountain lion from going up that tree. And maybe it's a spot for Junior to sit, to get away from a so-called predator. Another odd structure. So you have a leaner, you have another leaner, and then you have a tree break, which is kind of going over. Oh, come on. Oh, my computer's not responding to me. That's nice. So there's a tree break here. It looks like there's an X or something down here. X's don't always mean keep out, so don't believe in that. I don't know who started that crap, but it's not necessarily true. You have a tree break here, a tree break here, a tree break here. They're all kind of pointing different directions, which I found pretty interesting. I think there's more tree breaks all throughout in this area. Oh, there's a little one over there. They're just prolific in this one spot. I'll look and see. So the tree comes down. Oh, okay, yeah. So we have a tree that's been bent over, shoved in between this spot right here. So you got bark and stuff pushed out, and this tree comes down and it's shoved right inside that wedge and down through the other side. There's little scuff marks there. You can tell where the tree was shoved down through. Now it looks like, I want to say that this tree is probably supporting this tree right here. This kind of looks like a shelter in a weird sense. This almost looks like a fire, like a so-called fire ring, but of course this isn't a fire ring because there's a tree inside it. But there's other logs and stuff around this, kind of making a round display, almost like this would have been a fire spot. But this looks like a lean-to, where you could almost have, you could throw a tarp over this and you could fall asleep inside this. You might wake up with something furry next to you in the morning. Another series of tree breaks. Oh, well, I'm going to have to end it at this because we're at 26 minutes. So there will be another video on Sunday to follow this out, or hopefully pull this one out. I know there's more stuff on here, including a piece of artwork that I found that I am pretty sure a Sasquatch did this, and it's pretty cool. So my name is Patrick, and this is Sasquatch in the Wild. I hope you're enjoying the journey, and you'll see the next video on Sunday. Talk to you later.